Brett Yormark of the Big 12 said a couple of things recently. I don't know if I agree with either one.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, all that and more. We've always got you covered. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. That is Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. We, of course, go to him anytime such news pops up. And Brett Yormark made a couple comments. Nothing overly blasphemous, Drake, or absurd or insane. But I want to start with a first comment that Yormark is projecting an image of the Power Four being united right now, is what he indicated. They're stronger than they've ever been. Big 12's in a good spot in this scenario. That's, of course, what he would like it to be. I just don't know if I am buying that the Big 10 and the SEC have the best interests of the Big 12 and the ACC at the forefront of their agenda right now. Are you?
I'm not sure if you ever watched Ed, and Eddie on Cartoon Network.
Oh, yes. Oh, very much
Right,
so. Cartoon
right.
Network classic.
And whether it's Three Stooges, Ed, and Eddie, or any of those, there's always that one guy out of the three who just doesn't exactly belong. He's definitely the third wheel of the three. And his role is to say that the three have great rapport or a really good relationship. Now, I wouldn't say the Big 12 is idiotic or stupid. And I would argue that of the Big 12 and the ACC, Brett Yormark has more leverage leeway than Jim Phillips in the ACC, especially because that conference is being sued and the Big 12 is not. For Yormark to say this feels like he's touching the bases, just covering what he needs to cover, checking the box and saying, look, hey, we're all friends. Everybody here gets along. We're all in really good standing with one another. And what else would he say? I think the second you start picking fights with other commissioners, other conferences, things go south. George Kliavkoff said, we're not sure if we're shopping there yet with the Big 12. That was a little, just that little comment was one that seemed small in the moment, but afterwards, when you're not playing nice with conferences that view you as lesser, things can go south very quickly. For Yormark to save face and be political, not a bad thing, but I do think you're right. This is almost subliminal. He is saying more with less. That small comment of, hey, we're all cordial, we're all friends, there's great rapport amongst us, is the guy in the conversation who's not near as big, as we know objectively, as the SEC and Big Ten, saying, look, we're all good, same page, we're fine. And I'm not sure that's actually true.
Yeah, and it rings a little bit, not entirely, of the infamous Big Ten, Big 12, or Big Ten, Pac-12, ACC alliance back in the day. Like, everyone is on the same side, so to speak, right until the almighty dollar comes into play and that comes along. Because right now, look, I do not want in any way, shape, or form for any other conferences to go up in smoke. I don't want the Big Ten and the SEC to pull away. We're just reading the terrain here and saying, look, this stuff could happen. This is absolutely possible. I really hope it doesn't, because college football is great because everyone is a part of it, because you have these regional conferences that go from coast to coast and teams compete and all that comes into it. And if you were to just have the Big Ten and the SEC playing for their own championship, that'd be boring. Not boring is not the right word, but it would not. It'd be a different sport.
You've hit the nail on the head here with people love seeing Georgia, Ohio State until they don't anymore, until it's so saturated that product is not something people still want to come back and watch. Someone actually, I wish you could name someone commented that on one of my videos recently. I read like 3 comments a month, and they said, look, I understand right now everyone wants to see Alabama, Michigan, but the day will come 3 years from now where they've seen it too much. And that product, after the trilogy of Star Wars was over, nobody really cared about the 4th movie. After that, we thought, all right, we need to keep going. And the general public isn't behind it. The small portion maybe, but if you oversaturate college football, what's left with college football?
And you bring up a great point of oversaturation, because the other comment that Yormark made that I definitely disagree with is more teams, more access, more student athletes having the ability to get to the playoff, 14-team play. Drake, I've had this take for a while here on the show. I'll repeat it till it comes to fruition, and then I will say, well, I tried to tell you. Playoff expansion is not going to stop until they at least hit 24 teams. That might be in the next deal, but for those who are saying, well, 14 or 12 might be too many, or 12's my upper limit, or 14 is too many. Every time you crack open the door, what people are going to see behind it are dollar signs. And when they are there, they are not going to say no until the FCS has a 24-team playoff. And you are just going to hear the argument eventually when someone says, what about an 18-team playoff? No, that's too many. Well, in the FCS, they've got 24. Yeah. That's where we're headed. And that's why I put my foot down and say, no, please, Michael Scott, no, God, please, no. You can go now.
It is. Look, I don't feel bad as the hat comes off. As the host of Locked On Big 12, going against the rhetoric of the conference commissioner, there are times where Brett Yormark says things and I think, oh, maybe he has the right intention here, but it's not exactly spot on with where college football should go or is going from a traditionalist standpoint. Someone told me recently, Brett Yormark is a college fan first, then a businessman. I think that's the stupidest thing in the world. He is business oriented. Everything he's done has been about the dollar sign and the bottom line. Is that a bad thing for a commissioner? I don't think so. However, these comments seem out of touch with what college football fans believe. And I don't want to bring the hoops to the college football podcast here, but he also
I'll allow it.
He said, expand the NCAA tournament. Like, Brett, it feels so disconnected from what your fan base wants. However, again, what I believe he's going for here is my friends Greg Sankey and the Petiti guy are saying that we should have more money. So I think I should say the thing that gives everybody more money. And that, in essence, from a business standpoint, you think, all right, you're aligning yourself with the Sharks. You and Mark Cuban are in the same little pod here. That sounds good. I just don't think it's a good product for college football in the fact that we have a sample size that says, you know what, the BCS, as much as it sucked, got the national champion right a good portion of the time.
Bring back the BCS, Drake. Bring back the BCS before we go to a 12 or 14 team playoff. I'll die on that hill. I would rather see the bit. Look, if you want to propose a 6 or 8 team playoff, I might not push back 8. I don't know about that, but 6 team, like, right. Okay, but 12, 14, beyond that, I'm going full Teddy Bear and Family Guy. Here comes the train, and you're going to explode me into a poof of stuffing here, because that's the way it feels. And I mean, expanding the NCAA tournament, like, oh my gosh, no, just please. I don't know how to make it stop other than use what platform I do have here to voice my opposition and get as many people on my side as I can. But I don't know how to stop any of this. Like, does it stop?
I don't think it does. And it especially doesn't when there is no little man. The word monopoly is a really good way to get sued. So I won't say that anything is a monopoly here, though I'm not sure they're going to sue a Locked On college host. But truly, that's what is becoming is one or two conferences, a la one or two TV networks, are calling all the shots here. And they call shots based on revenue, money, what's going to make the most money. And if that's a college football playoff that's expanded, we've seen the $1.1 billion price tag on a 12-team playoff. So then they think, well, wait a second, what if we expand it to 24? That means more money. And in essence, Brett Yormark's in a position where if he says, I'm going to push back on this and be the guy who's the altruistic best thing for college football, I can make it work, then you kind of look like those people who are screaming for a super league that have no power. The people that the SEC and Big Ten won't respond to their phone calls and ESPN and Fox want to dox them entirely. Those people don't have a lot of say, and Brett Yormark doesn't want to become that outlier or Rembrandt, because if you do, you ask for $0. And in college football, obviously that doesn't work.
Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12 on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Drake, thanks for stopping by.
A frustrated Drake Toll. Frustrated.
Yes, we are a pair of frustrated podcast hosts here. Is Kalen DeBoer frustrated right now? Talk about that next. Before we get to the Tide, let's get to Monopoly Go. Game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine, and there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover at all times in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Not one, but two defensive backs have left the University of Alabama. What do we make of that? We bring on Luke Robinson, Locked On Alabama, joining me here on the show. Tony Mitchell and Peyton Woodyard. Let's start with Mitchell. He's the more experienced of the two. What did you think when you heard that he put his name in the transfer portal?
I was expecting it to a degree because I had been made aware that this is something that very well may happen. In fact, is probable. But it didn't happen until later on, to like the very end of the portal, right? So I was thinking, okay, maybe he stays. And what's interesting about the Tony Mitchell situation that everybody may not know outside of Alabama is Tony Mitchell got in some pretty hot water right after he signed with the Tide. And again, I'm going off of memory, but he was in Florida. Excuse me. He had some stuff in the car that shouldn't have been in the car. He was going an excessive speed. I mean, like incredible speed, something bananas. And he got in a lot of trouble, and Alabama stuck with him though. And he didn't really play this last year. He was sort of, I mean, maybe half-heartedly suspended in a way. I mean, even if he could have played, I don't know if he would have played till later on. But I don't think he was ready anyway. And then he bails. Now, what you don't know in today's transfer portal world is, was he pushed out a little bit? Was he encouraged to get in? Or did he just want to go somewhere? Or did somebody call him up and through a friend of a friend offer more money or whatever? You don't know. But it is interesting because he can't transfer to an SEC school now. So it's not going to be like, hey, I really love this other school that was recruiting me. I think he's going to have to go somewhere else. And he's going to have to go somewhere else that's going to take a chance on a kid that bailed on the school that took a chance on him. And again, I'm not bad-mouthing him. More power to him. Kids are able to do this now, whether you like it or not. I personally am not a huge fan of it, but since you can do it, they might as well. And I don't know that this really affects Alabama's depth too terribly much. It does in terms of a warm body being in the defensive backfield, but this was not a guy that had brought up a ton of experience. In fact, if you had told me, I'm more dejected that Peyton Woodyard left than I am Tony Mitchell left. And that's just the way it is. Tony Mitchell just hadn't really made his mark. Peyton Woodyard had a nice spring. He had a nice play in the spring game. And I think it was a little surprising. I think that he is one of those that probably was able to get in touch with somebody, or somebody got in touch with him, and they made the selling point like, hey, you went to play for Nick Saban. Nick Saban's not there anymore. In fact, Peyton Woodyard, if you remember, in his recruiting profile picture where he committed to Alabama, he was wearing Saban's very famous straw hat. And I think that was sort of an excuse to be able to go somewhere closer to home. They would probably pay him some money as well. Again, this is me theorizing, but also taking an educated guess. And more power to him, I guess. I certainly hate it for the Tide because I think he's going to be a good player. And I hate that he didn't even stick around for 1 year just to see, hey, maybe this can work for me. But it is what it is. And meanwhile, Alabama's gone out and gotten a kid named Cameron Martin from the University of Charlotte, and who had recently gotten the transfer portal. And experienced guy, not a bad player at all. He was at the University of Charlotte, though. Let's call a spade a spade. It wasn't like he was playing at Ohio State. So they've lost Caleb Downs. They've lost Tony Mitchell. They've lost Peyton Woodyard to bring in Keon Sabb from Michigan, who's a good player. He, in my opinion, he's not Caleb Downs, but I don't know if anybody else in the country is. And they bring in Cam Martin, who I think is also a pretty good player and can certainly add some depth. And then they're going to have 3 freshmen that are probably going to have to be counted on a lot.
So I want to go on the Woodyard thing for a moment, because this is happening more and more, where Peyton Woodyard is a 2024 high school recruit. Now, granted, he committed to play for Nick Saban, and that was back in January, but he went through spring football. And you would think that if you were going to leave because the coach you committed to play for retired, went somewhere else, or whatever, I think everybody understands that. But this increasing, I don't think it's widespread, but there's an increasing number of players who commit, they show up for spring football, they go through spring football, and then transfer out before they've ever taken a single snap. And look, the door swings both ways. Caden Proctor just did this, of course, with Iowa. He was transferring out and then decided, oh, no, I'm going to go back and join. And he actually transferred to Alabama the first day that the spring portal window opened here. But what do you kind of make of that, Luke? How difficult is that for coaches and for Kalen DeBoer to know that you bring guys in, but at any point in time, if they don't think they're going to play as a true freshman when they expect to, they might just go out and transfer somewhere else? I think it's got to feel as a head coach like somewhat of a wasted amount of effort. You think about the time, money, resources that goes into recruiting a kid, and then he never even plays a game for you. Like, if coaches are frustrated by that, I can't blame them.
Yeah, coaches are probably finally earning their exorbitant salaries. I mean, I say finally earning, I don't mean to take a shot at them, but some people thought coaches were overpaid, and they had these tremendous buyouts even if they stunk. Well, now, look, having to deal with this headache 24/7, 365, yeah, I think it's worth it. I mean, it's worth the money. It's just it's a sad state of affairs. I've talked about it every show I've been on. That, look, I understand for rightly or wrongly, the players feel like they have been hosed for years, like they hadn't been getting their piece of the pie, like everybody's been taking advantage of them. And in a way, I think they're right. I don't think it's been that way forever, but I think once the money got big enough, everybody needed to get together and say, look, we got to do something to sort of nip this in the bud. Well, the NCAA took a hardline stance that was frankly very stupid and greedy, and it has come to bite them in the butt. What's happened is the pendulum has swung from one side to the other so violently and so quickly. I mean, it's done a complete 180. It was all the way this side, now it's all the way that side. We need, as fans, we need it to be a little bit more in the middle. And I don't really know what that answer even looks like anymore, because I think it would be helpful. The essence of college football, the foundation of it, is built on the passion that the fans have for their respective universities. And that passion is rooted in, not only did most of them go to that respective university or just grow up in that state or have a family member that went there, whatever, but it was watching these kids come in and then get better as the years go on and progress. Watching somebody like a Mac Jones stick it out at Alabama and wait his turn behind all these other incredible quarterbacks. But even going back much further than that, in the 80s and 90s specifically, when guys, they come in as freshmen and they're just wide-eyed and they don't know what the heck's going on. Next thing you know, they're sophomores and they're beginning to pick it up. And then as juniors, they might become all SEC, and then they're all Americans and seniors. And you watched that whole thing and you felt like, hey, that guy's part of my family. Well, now your family is like, it's like an uncle that just gets a divorce every year and a half. I mean, he brings in a new, step aunt for you every time there's a Thanksgiving, and you're like, okay, who are you bringing in now? I mean, I still love her, I guess, because she's my aunt, but I mean, like, I know she's short term.
It's much more mercenary. It's got that sort of feel that the engagement between players and fans, I think in a lot of ways is now limited from the fan side to when the games are played. Because once the season ends, it feels like it's just a free-for-all, and yeah, I know I did like these fans and whatnot, but that's not what actually matters to me here. And I think that's the disconnect.
And it's also very emblematic of what's going on in society. I don't like something, I'll just get rid of it instead of trying to make it better, or trying to work on a relationship or trying to do anything else, or hey, I've borrowed too much money, somebody will forgive it. I'm not trying to get political. I'm just saying, there's a lot of things like that. where people don't want to work through their issues anymore. They feel like everything's got to be solved right now. And the only way to do that is to get rid of something else. And if that may mean get rid of the current school you're in instead of trying to grow and get better. That said, I understand very seriously that some kids make a mistake in recruiting and they may want to go home, or their mother really is sick and they need to be closer to them. And there's some people out there that need to go to another school for whatever reason. Maybe a coach just had it out for them or whatever. I understand that. So we need to find a happy medium here, because I like the transfer portal where something like you can transfer once, and then if you want to transfer again, you're fine, but you got to sit out. I don't care if you're a graduate. I don't care what it is. I would actually be fine if they said, here's the deal. From now on, everybody's got 5 years. There's no more red shirts. You can play 5 years. Now, if you there's no 6th year, there's no 7th year. I mean, there's somebody in basketball coming up, it's going to be a 9th year. I mean, give me a break.
Well, COVID played a part in that.
I understand.
I hope we don't have another one of those situations arise.
I understand. But this even translates to the NFL in a way, if you ask me, because people say we're becoming more like the NFL. But even in the NFL, who was the most fun team to watch this year? It's probably the Detroit Lions, and everybody loved them. And you know what the Detroit Lions did for the most part? They built through the draft.
Mm-hmm.
They really did. You think about some of their major players, the Sam Laporta from Iowa, he was awesome, right? And they drafted him. They drafted J-Mo Williams, who played really well. They drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, they drafted – think about who's the most beloved Detroit Lions ever. Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders. They were –
Matt Stafford.
They were lifers. Well, Stafford Stafford moved on, but Stafford would have been. I mean, I think Detroit was like, it's just time for everybody to move, and I get that. But, I think that it's better when a group stays together and you can put your arms around them. I mean, in basketball, look, and I love this Alabama basketball team this last year, but it's a bunch of new dudes. And it was a bunch of new dudes the year before, and it'll be a bunch of new dudes next year. Now, Grant Nelson's going to come back, and that's great. Mark Sears hopefully will come back, and that's great. Maybe Jaron Stevenson. But, they lost a lot of guys in the transfer portal. The only guy that could not come back was Aaron Estrada, yet Alabama's going to have massive turnover in basketball. I just would like to see where not necessarily we're all chained to one another, like you choose this school, and that's your school for life. I don't necessarily want that. I get it. But, boy, I wish people would stick it out a little bit more. I think it just makes a little bit more sense.
Luke Robinson, Locked on Alabama. We hit all sorts of topics today. I'm here for it, as always. Luke, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, bud.
In the new look ACC, which one of those 3 new coming teams is going to make the most noise? Might be Cal. That's coming up next. Before we get to that West Coast team in the Atlantic Coast Conference, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Best place to go. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Does Cal make any noise in the new look ACC? I don't know. That could make more than you think. Perhaps. Thomas Dunn at WriteForCalifornia.com joining me here on the show. What do you make of Cal's offseason right now, Thomas, as they go into the ACC? They were a 500 team last year, top 20 transfer portal class. We'll dive into that a little bit more. But what are you feeling right now about the Bears?
It's a common theme across these last few off seasons. It's intrigue. Is the process there? Is the execution there? Is the offense coming along? Is the defense going to come along with them? Is the special teams going to be the third part of the pie that finally slots into place? Right now, after spring football, Cal, they're an unfinished product right now. That's no stretch to say that. I think the offense is distinctly ahead of the defense. I've been fooled the last 2 years by the defensive lockdowns during spring practice, and I am no longer going to fall into that line of thinking until they prove otherwise out on the field. There have been lots of changes, lots of shifting around, lots of new faces and new places and new people that really need to prove themselves, because Cal is at an inflection point right now heading into a new conference. They survived the first round of conference realignment, and good results will only help them when the next round inevitably comes along.
Yeah, and the ACC is facing an existential crisis, and Cal might have to ask themselves, are we staying here? Are we going back to the Pac-12? Are we going independent? What exactly is happening there? But in terms of football results on the field, well, that's of course determined by the players that you have. And a couple guys come in from SEC schools, no less, in the secondary to go play for the ACC-bound California Golden Bears. Josiah Wagner from Oklahoma, Ryan Yates from LSU. These guys had offers to go other places. How important is it for Justin Wilcox to have landed this pair of guys in the secondary, a position that he coaches very closely?
It's very important because last year I thought the secondary would be a big strength of the Cal team, and it frankly wasn't. And part of that can be shifted up to the idea that Cal didn't have enough along the front seven to get things done, and lots of people that were being plugged in one week and then plugged out of next week for any number of reasons, and that could have been an effect into the secondary. But in general, they just need more talent back there alongside Craig Woodson, alongside Noah Williams and the Idaho transfer Marcus Williams. I think both Yates and Wagner very much provide a higher floor and lots of talent that can be tapped into from a guy who knows how to coach these defensive backs in Justin Wilcox.
Yeah, so are these guys both coming in and you expect them to start right away? Are they rotation players? Where do they fit?
They're both rotation players as of right now. Right now, the starting corner spots have pretty much been locked down. Noel Williams, the former transfer from UNLV, who's got a year plus under his belt in the program now, is starting alongside Marcus Harris, who transferred in from Idaho and has been absolutely been one of, if not the biggest stars coming out of spring ball. He's established his brand and then some, and has caught the eyes of myself and a few other people who've been observing the Bears and how they've been coming along in those abbreviated sessions. I think those two guys are locked down in the safety spots. Craig Woodson locked down one. And then the second safety spot is probably the only one that's really up for grabs. And I don't imagine that they'll be day one starters, but there's no reason why they can't be both rotating in the corner and safety spots respectively.
So Cal over the last couple of years, Thomas, has never been a big high school recruiting power, and I don't know that they ever really will be, even though they're in the Bay Area. It's just the combination of the brand, maybe some academic restrictions. They're not nearly as stringent as Stanford. These two things are not even close to the same, and nowhere is that more evident than in the transfer portal, where for the second straight year, Cal has pulled in a top 20 recruiting class nationally just in the transfer portal, according to our friends at 24/7 Sports. If you just say at the outset, a team in the loaded Pac-12 last year that went 500 brings in a top 20 portal class and returns their head coach and quarterback. They lost their OC Jake Spavital to head down to Waco and be the offensive coordinator at Baylor. But if you just said those things at the outset, I think you would look at that team and say, well, I think they could maybe be a 7, 8, maybe 9 win team this coming season going into a team that or a league that's not as deep in the ACC. Do you feel that way about Cal?
I feel that way to a certain extent. To me, the time for talking is over in the Justin Wilcox era. We can talk about these laudy transfer portal rankings in terms of where Cal fits into that. We can talk about the good dynamics that are coming into practice with the offense, with the defense, the coming along of the special teams. At this point, we're in year 8. You got to win football games. There's no.
Is it year 8?
Yeah. Time goes by quickly.
Wow, that time flies. I'd say when you're having fun. I don't know how much fun Cal has had exactly.
bits and pieces of fun.
There have been moments. There have been
2018 and 2019 when we were suffocating all West Coast offenses known to mankind. That was a fun time. I'll tell you that. No one tell Jake Browning and Chris Peterson about the horrors of Berkeley.
About what lightning does to a football game up in Seattle. What was that, 2019? The Lightning game against the Huskies? Yeah, that was heck. Anyway, I got you off track there. Continue.
Yeah, no, we can go on for hours about that. But at this point, year 8, Justin Wilcox era, lots of good pieces. Now you got to put them together. And there's no reason why this team cannot put them together. I like the way Mike Blesh has come around, the new offensive coordinator with his approach. He was formerly the offensive coordinator down in North Texas. And now he's making his way out here, out west, taking on additional responsibilities in being the offensive line coach last year, now the offensive coordinator this year, and to help out Fernando Mendoza, who's really, really coming along very well. Someone who attacked the middle of the field very well last year, was working up the seam with tight end Jack Andrews and wide receiver Tron Grizel. Now it's a matter of attacking outside the numbers. Can you throw deep? Are you willing to throw deep? Because you're going to need to find a way to win games. It's never going to be easy, especially going across country. You're going to be in the elements for at least 2 games, no matter what. You're going into big time road environments like Florida State in conference play. Can't believe I'm uttering that sentence. And then Auburn early in the season. Cal, like I mentioned earlier, the time for talking is over. You need to go out and win games. And Cal fans, there's an expectation to win games now. Justin Wilcox sliding by with another 7-win season, you're going to run into probably some more apathy. 8-win season, that will get people talking. That will get people going. And anything beyond that, okay, this is the team and program that we expect to have now because of all these transfer portal rankings. Now it's up to the coaches to, start up this development and make things happen, because Cal fans, to a certain extent, they're like, it's lame duck. We've done this dance 7 years in a row. Now let's go break the door down.
Fernando Mendoza is probably one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the ACC because he's probably not very well known to the schools in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I bet SMU doesn't even have much of an idea. No one in their league has seen Fernando Mendoza in person except for Stanford, who's going with them to the ACC out of the former Pac-12, RIP. So I think Mendoza has a most curious career trajectory. Last year, he's the third quarterback on the depth chart for most of the year. It's Sam Jackson, it's Ben Finley, it's Sam Jackson, it's Ben Finley, it's Fernando Mendoza. And he was just clearly better than the other two and ran the offense really well. How good can he be? And what do you feel like Cal can accomplish with him at the helm?
I think Cal could accomplish some very good things with him at the helm. I think it would be a very reasonable expectation to slot in Cal somewhere in between 6th and 10th place in total offense next year in the ACC. Not world beater by any stretch of the imagination, but a team that can go win games because of Fernando Mendoza in the offense. You put him together with Jaden Knott. You put him together with tight end Jack Endries, an offensive line group that was really good at run blocking last year. My question resides in who's going to take the main wide receiver one? Is it going to be Tobias Merriweather, the transfer from Notre Dame? Is Mikey Matthews going to step up in the slot, the transfer from Utah? Is Tron Grizel going to take another step, being the walk-on that no one knew last year, to the scholarship player that people are going to prepare for now? Can Cal put everything together and not only do that, but do it on a consistent basis? Because Fernando Mendoza, he's developed very well. He took his lumps last year, namely against Oregon and even some in parts against UCLA, despite the big victory. His development will lead Cal to bigger heights than they have seen in recent years. And so far, I think he's on the right track. Now it's just a matter of putting it all together on a consistent basis, because you see it once in practice, that's cool. You see it twice in practice, that's cool. Now I need to see it not only in 11-on-11 situations, but also when you're down 3rd and 13 down in Doak Campbell Stadium down against Florida State. You need to see it happen. You need to see a way to make plays. Are you going to go to Pittsburgh late in the year and go find a way to make a play?
They go to Auburn week 2. And if you were ever looking for an early season indication of where is this Mendoza guy at, is he going to be able to lead us to an 8+ win regular season? That would be the game where you'll figure out. You don't even necessarily have to win it. I don't think, Thomas. I think you just go into that game and say, if Mendoza looks good and you lose a close one, just like it was last year at Memorial Stadium in Berkeley when they should have. I'm sorry to bring that up, but they should have won the game. Auburn fans would say they should have won by 10 to 15 points. Nobody played well. Both teams lost in that one, though Auburn did quite literally win the game. But I think a week 2 test down at Jordan-Hare Stadium, I think that's going to be a really important marker for Mendoza.
I would tend to agree, and I'm going to do my best to be at that game, because who wouldn't want to experience Jordan-Hare down in the deep part of the South, down in September, week 2. And like you mentioned, it's a benchmark for Fernando Mendoza. And, going back to last year a little bit, I think the coaches, there was a little bit of a wanting to find the return on investment of guys like Sam Jackson V and Ben Finley, guys who have a supposed high ceiling in Sam Jackson, who's ironically now at Auburn as a wide
I was going to say, you mean Auburn's newest wide receiving target?
That'll be fun. And then Ben Finley, the guy who had supposedly the higher floor coming out of NC State, and now just didn't really have it. Now the coaches, it's easy to say they pivoted too late to Fernando Mendoza, but I'm not there every day in the meeting rooms to see who's doing what. So I'm just glad that they finally found what's supposedly the right solution now, and hopefully he continues to develop as he has, because not only is he a great football player in the strides that he made last year, phenomenal ambassador for the team, phenomenal ambassador for the university, and generally you will not find someone who has a qualm about him.
Thomas Dunn, writeforcalifornia.com. Everything you need about the Bears. Thanks, Thomas.
Hey, appreciate it as always, man.
Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.